Hello students and welcome to my channel. In this English session, we will be learning Standard 9th Unit 2, 2.3 poem Somebody's Mother. The poem Somebody's Mother, written by Mary Brine, highlights the virtues of kindness and sympathy through a small incident between an old woman and a young schoolboy. This is a short story with a hearty message embedded in a form of a beautiful poem. So let's start with the poem Somebody's Mother. Given below are the meanings. So let's learn the first 4 lines of the poem. The woman was old and ragged and grey, and bent with the chill of a winter's day. The streets were white with recent snow, and the woman's feet with age were slow. So in the first stanza, that is the 4 lines of the poem describes a very cold day. And on this cold day, there stood a woman with the torn and the worn clothes. She was old and aged, and due to the extreme cold and due to her age, she was standing in a stooping posture, that is, she was bent down. Because it had snowed, so the streets of the road were covered with the white snow all the way. The old woman was walking slowly because of her old age, and also she was scared that she might fall down. And the crowded crossing she waited along, jostled aside by the careless throng of human beings who passed her by, unheeding the glance of her anxious eye. Here jostled, it means push roughly in a crowd. Throng, it means large crowd. Glance, a brief look. Unheeding, careless or indifferent to others. Anxious, keen or eager. In the second stanza, the poetess describes that the old woman waited to cross the road, but she was unable to do so because she was scared that she might fall down while crossing the road. There were many careless people who was passing by the road, but everyone were trying to push her to one side. No one took notice of the worried look of this old woman, that even she wants to cross the road and she needs the help. But no one came forward to help this old woman. Down the street with laughter and shout, glad in the freedom of school let out, came happy boys like a flock of sheep, hailing the snow pile white and deep. Past the woman so old and grey, hasten the children on their way. Here glad, it means happy, flock, bunch, hailing, welcoming, piled, stacked, and hastened, it means to move fast. In this stanza, the poetess describes that the old woman was standing on the side of a road, waiting that someone would help her to cross the road with all the eager eye. But no one took the notice of this old woman. She was standing helpless. And at that time, the school nearby was let out, and the boys rushed out of the school like a flock of sheep. They were very happy because the school was over, and seeing the heap of snow, the boys started to shout happily and merrily. They welcomed the snowfall, and they started to go ahead of the old aged woman very quickly without even taking the notice of this old woman who was standing on the side of a road. Let's learn the next stanza of the poem. None offered a helping hand to her, so weak and timid, afraid to steer, lest the carriage wheels or the horse's feet should trample her down in the slippery street. Here timid, it means shy, steer, moved slightly, carriage, vehicles with wheels drawn by horses, and trample, it means walk heavily. So in this stanza, the poetess describes when the old woman was standing on the side of a road with all that expectation that somebody would give her a helping hand to cross the road. Now when she was standing on the side of a road, and the school was let over, and all the school boys were passing from the road quickly. Among all the boys who passed, no one even noticed that the old woman needed the help. No one offered her a helping hand to cross the road. And as she was very weak and timid, she was afraid, and she thought that the carriage wheels or the horse's feet may run over her on that slippery road. So she was just standing on the side of a road. Next stanza. At last came out of the merry troop the gayest boy of all the group. He paused beside her and whispered low, I'll help you cross if you wish to go. Yeah, merry, it means jolly or happy. Gay, it means happiest. Whispered low, it means spoke very softly. And paused, it means stopped. At last, the happy group of boys came out of the school. Among the group of the boys, the happiest boy among the group, he stopped beside this old woman. He went close to her and he asked quietly to the old woman that he would help her to cross the road if she wished to go. Next stanza. Her aged hand on his strong young arm she placed, and so without hurt or harm, he guided the trembling feet along, proud that his own were young and strong. Then back again to his friends he went, his young heart happy and well content. It means guided, here it means directed. Trembling means shivering, and content, it means satisfied. So the old woman, when the boy asked this old woman that can he help her to cross the road, this old woman, she placed her aged hand on his strong arm and he carefully guided this her shivering feet, that is the aged woman, without any hurt or harm. The boy felt proud of himself that his arms were strong enough to help the old woman to cross the road safely. His heart was all felt with happiness and all the content that he was doing some modest act to help this old woman to cross the road. Let's learn the meaning of the next stanza of the poem. She's somebody's mother, boys, you know, for all. She's aged and poor and slow. And someone, sometime, may lend a hand to help my mother, you understand? If ever she is old and poor and grey, and her own dear boy so far away. The meaning of lend a hand is to help. So in this stanza, the poetess describes that after helping the old woman to cross the road, the boy returned to his friend feeling happy and satisfied. And then he explained his friends that the old woman must be somebody's old mother. And one day might come that his own mother would be old and she might need help when he might not be there or he must be away from his mother. And he would want someone to lend the helping hand to his mother the way how he has helped this old woman to cross the road. Let's understand the last stanza of the poem. Somebody's mother bowed low her head in her home that night, and the prayer she said was, God, be kind to that noble boy who is somebody's son and pride and joy. The meaning of bowed is bent and noble is impressive. So let's understand the meaning of the last stanza of the poem. In this stanza, the poetess describes that the somebody's mother means the old woman went home and prayed for the boy that night, asking God to be kind to that boy who was somebody's son and pride and joy. Now, the reason why the old woman tells or she refers the boy to be pride and joy, because the boy who has helped this old woman was different from the other boys, where there were so many school boys. No one came forward to help this old woman to cross the road. It was only this boy who was so different from others. He was the most cheerful boy, and yet he found the time to come and give the helping hand to this old woman to cross the road. He was a virtuous boy, and because of this reason, old women think that this boy must be the pride and joy of the parents who has got all the good qualities to help others. This is the end of a beautiful poem, Somebody's Mother, which conveys a message of how compassion can make world a better place to live in. Now let's learn the figures of speech used in this poem. The woman was old and ragged and grey. The figure of speech used in this line is repetition, because the word and is repeated for poetic effect. Another figure of speech used here is tautology, because the word old and grey, both this word have the same meanings, and so we have the figure of speech used in this line is tautology. The streets were white with recent snow, and the figure of speech used here is alliteration, because the initial sound of W is repeated in the words were, white and with for the better poetic effect. The next figure of speech, and the woman's feet with age were slow. The figure of speech used in this line is inversion, because the words are not arranged in a correct prose order. The correct order of this line should be, and the woman's feet were slow with age. Let's move to the next line. At the crowded crossing, she waited long. The figure of speech used here is alliteration, because the initial sound of CR is repeated in the words crowded and crossing for the better poetic effect. Fifth line. Came happy boys like a flock of sheep. The figure of speech used here is simile, because the boys are directly compared to a flock of sheep. Sixth figure of speech. Past the woman so old and grey. Here, figure of speech uses tautology. The words old and grey express similar ideas. Next line. None offered a helping hand to her. Alliteration, because the initial sound of H is repeated in the words helping and hand for better poetic effect. Next line. So weak and timid, afraid to steer. Tautology, because the words weak and timid express similar ideas. Next line. Her aged hand on his strong young arm she placed. Figure of speech. Two figures of speech are used in this line. First one is inversion. The words are not arranged in a correct prose order. The correct order is, she placed her aged hand on his strong young arm. Antithesis, because opposite words aged and young has been used. The last line. She placed and so without hurt or harm. And the figure of speech used in the last line is alliteration, because the initial sound H is been repeated in the words hurt and harm for the better poetic effect. So this is the end of the poem and the figure of speech used in this poem. I hope students you all understood the poem well. Thank you.